Hello and welcome to this video on the Strange Science Instruments F-1 stereo low-pass filter. Let's check out what's to come before we get into it. Now, Strange Science Instruments played around with lots of different filter topologies, but ultimately came down to, and I quote the website, Bob Moog's transistor ladder filter, which is a work of genius. They say that the design is brilliant, using a small number of components to achieve a warm and fat sound. And using this as the basis or the starting point, they've added modern touches like linked stereo or dual mono operation, different 2-pole, 3-pole, 4-pole or 12 dB, 18 dB or 24 dB per octave responses, and temperature compensation for accurate tracking. So you have a saturation knob to saturate the input, cutoff frequency, resonance and output level. And that means you can really drive the saturation hard, but back the output off, or back the saturation off and get really clean input and clean sound and have a bit of output gain should you need it as well. You have an in and out, a cutoff input for modulating the cutoff frequency, and a resonance input as well. There's the stereo linking, meaning all these controls and CV-ins will control both filters. There's a switch for the 2, 3 or 4 pole response. You can chain these in series, patching the out of one into the other to get even more extreme filtering, up to 8 poles in terms of response and 48 dBs per octave. We'll look at that later in the video. And there's this cutoff offset that changes the cutoff of both frequencies. And this is great when they're chained for more extreme filtering, so we can get almost formant-like shifts in the filtering. There's a lot to go through, there's a lot of patches. Check out the patches and the links in the description and on screen. Skip around if you wish, watch the whole thing. Enjoy the content as you wish. Let's get stuck into it. So for this first part of the demo, we're simply going to look at the sound of the filter. Mono, simple filter demo, raw tones. This is my saw wave at the input. We're coming in and out of the filter, and that's it for now. We're currently in the 2-pole mode. I'll go through all the modes, varying saturations, varying resonances, and sweep the cutoff around, and we'll finally add some modulation. There's quite a lot of options in terms of being able to saturate this and those pole switches, so let's get into it. So that was 2-pole. Let's go over to 3-pole, which is an 18 dB low pass response, and it's got slightly thicker resonance as well. The resonance increases, as I said, as we go through 2 to 3 to 4 poles. And here's that difference between the 2 and the 3-pole. Over to 4-pole. And just quickly, here's the difference between the 2, the 3 and the 4 pole. And the different octaves. Take the input up an octave. So that's just some sweeps and some raw sounds right from the filter at various settings. Now we've heard the raw tones, let's hear this in some musical context. The observant among you will know I'm using both filters here, but we're just listening to this left-hand side for a bass line first. Simple sequence, envelope going into cutoff. Let's just check out some of the filter sounds. That really croaky, meaty kind of 4-pole response. And on the right hand side, I've got another oscillator. It's again a saw wave, but it's playing a third, well, an octave and a third above. So it's adding some kind of spice to the bass line, if you like. Just raise the output and you'll hear that mixed together. The envelope modulator on the right hand side is less frequent than the one on the left, so it's kind of just this added harmonic accent on top of the bass line. And of course, we couldn't do a stereo filter demo without a patch in stereo. So here's a stereo mix in the M4. There's a link for that video in the description. Coming into the F-1 stereo filter, stereo link is on, going into some reverb, and that's what we're recording. We've got some mixed modulation, which is what you can see on data. It's the mix of a stepped sequence in time with my pitch sequence, and a wave-folded slow LFO moving that cutoff. We'll have a quick play around, just kind of bathe in this stereo ambience. Pulling out the modulation, let's check out that cutoff offset. And make sure you've got some headphones on or decent speakers so you can hear this properly. Right hand side's a lot brighter, left hand side's a lot more filtered back. And then left side's a lot more open, brighter, cutoffs higher. Right hand side's filtered back with a lower cutoff. I'm going to ditch all the reverb. Reverb back again. So here we're going to look at chaining the filters one into the other in series for more extreme filtering. So my sound is coming into the first filter. Stereo link is on, so this right hand filter will share the controls of the left hand one. These will do nothing, as we'll see in a minute. But I'm splitting the output of the first filter into the second, and then coming out of the second, that's the blue trace on data and what we're going to be hearing. So this 2-pole mode now becomes a 4-pole mode because it's 2 poles on this side and another 2 on this filter. We can then go to 3-pole mode, which is 6, which would be like a 36 dB per octave response. And the 4-pole mode would be like a harsh 8-pole steep low pass, very steep cutoff or drop off around that cutoff point, which would be like a 48 dB per octave response. So we get more extreme filtering and more extreme resonance as well. So let's hear it. You can hear my input is a mix of oscillators. So what's nice there in that 2-pole mode is that because we're chaining them, we get a 4-pole with a very different response and different resonance character to just the single filter in the actual 4-pole mode. Going up to 3 poles, which is 6, as you go through both, with a 36 dB per octave response. Different resonance flavour again, very acidic. And 4-pole mode, which now makes them 8. So that's chaining these for more extreme filtering into that stereo mode, into the first filter, out of the first into the second, coming out of the second, both filters in series, and a lot more extreme filtering. So here we'll look at audio rate modulation. I'm going to control all of this externally. I have an offset voltage, which is going to be the equivalent of me just turning the cutoff knob, but I'm going to do that elsewhere like this. Have an audio rate modulation source and an envelope. Here's the envelope. With some cutoff mod, just with the offset. Now adding that audio rate modulation that you could just hear in the background, there's some glorious tones to be had. Sweeping that cutoff. I'll just change the rate of audio rate modulation. Right back up again. With some of that envelope modulating it as well. I'm just going to change the pitch of this audio rate modulation one more time. Really wet kind of tones there. That's audio rate modulation. It takes to it really well. So because this demo is very kind of heavy on the filter tones and droning waves and getting extra responses out of this thing, let's just have a little musical acid break. 3-pole mode, resonant filtering, envelope to cut off, nice and simple. Here's the filter without any modulation. Saturation on the front end of the filter is great, but it chokes out the resonance a little bit. Let's add some envelope modulation to the cutoff. Now, with formant filters and trying to create vocal and formant-like tones, we tend to have like a dual bandpass or dual resonant peaks that we can sweep and move through a wave to model that kind of vocal tract, that glottal sound that formants give us. Now, we don't have kind of dual peaks or dual bandpass modes in this, but in the stereo mode, linking these and chaining them like we did for that more extreme filter response earlier in the video, where we come into channel 1, out of 1 to 2, and then 2 is our final output. They're in series. We can use that cutoff offset to change the peaks of these two filters, even though they're stereo linked, so they're being controlled by the same filter. So let's listen to it first. This is in its normal position. There's a center detent on this, so it's nice just to set it at noon and kind of feel safe in the knowledge that they're set the same, or at least set to what the cutoff should be if you're not in the stereo link mode. So here's the raw sound. And now I'm going to sweep that cutoff offset while this is even more resonant, and you start to hear these vocal-like tones come in. So if we take a quick look at that on, say, a spectrum analyzer, we can see this resonant peak running away from the other harmonics that are coming through. Maybe even more obvious on, say, a spectrograph. See that rise there showing us that this resonance and those harmonics have swept away from where they originally were. So there's just a little bit of experimentation, linking these filters and using that cutoff offset for a dual resonant peak, trying to model some formant filtering. So here we're going to make some percussion sounds. I've got the channels chained in stereo mode again, which is the same patch as that more extreme filter responses, chaining the 2 poles to make 4, the 3 to make 6, and the 2 4-pole modes to make 8 and a 48 dB per octave response. With these stereo linked and the resonance at full, it's just bumping a bit more of that oscillating resonance in, a bit of a stronger signal. So sweeping the cutoff, this is all controlled externally into this single cutoff input. And adding an envelope to that, it's going to give us a nice kick when it's tuned down low. And having a negative offset means I can take it lower than the actual cutoff knob goes. There's where it would just sit with the envelope added to it. But adding a negative offset, we get some nice thumpy, clicky kick drums. So here we're going to try and make a high pass filter out of a low pass filter. And we can do that by inverting the dry input signal that goes into the filter and mixing it with the filter's output. So this involves, say, taking a saw wave, as I have here, into the filter, completely untouched, splitting that signal from this oscillator into an inverter, bringing that into a mixer, so we have an inverted version, and mixing that with the filter's output. So here on the mixer to the left, the M4, check out that video in the description. Here's my input wave inverted. That's on this channel with a blue stackable as the input. My non-inverted version goes into the filter, out of the filter into channel 4. So with the cutoff up full, which would be like the high pass cutoff being all the way up full, I just want to balance the levels on the mixer until I get the most kind of cancellation on that wave. And we can see this will turn into more of a flat line, and we'll hear a lot of the energy drop out of this waveform. So it's now just this kind of fizzy, crunchy thing. So now sweeping this cutoff should be like a high pass filter. It's not quite, and it's a bit of a balancing act, but it's an interesting effect. Having changed the poles and the response of that filter, just had to rebalance it on the mixer again. Now, if I pass all of that we're listening to, which is the mix of the inverted dry and the filtered sound, into the second channel, we get a Korg MS-20 style dual filter setup where we've got a high pass on one side into a low pass on the other. So I'm going to patch the mixer's output across to filter 2, and then we'll listen to and record filter 2's output. Coming into data first so we can see it. So we've still got that high pass style filtering on the left hand side. And now a low pass on top on the right hand side. And because these aren't stereo linked at all, they've got independent saturations and independent resonance controls as well. Yet even more interesting tones from this thing. So that's it for this video on the Strange Science Instruments F-1 stereo low pass filter. Check out the video for the M4 mixer in the description. Both just kind of ooze quality in terms of design and sound. Go back and check out any of those patches using the timing links in the description. Patreon.com/DivKid if you want to support what I'm doing. Hit thumbs up, comment, like, share, ask a question, usual gabber. Cheers for watching.